Floridalma Roque was born in Honduras in the mid-1970s but later migrated to the United States. Settling in New York City, she dedicated her career to nursing, particularly in the care of the elderly. After separating from the father of her 3 children, Floridalma began a new chapter in her life with a man named Jeremiah. A vivacious woman, she was full of love, had many friends, and harbored dreams yet to be fulfilled. As she approached her 60th birthday, Floridalma sought to enhance her appearance, leading her to undergo cosmetic surgery in 2022 at the clinic of Dr. Kevin Maloof. Born in Guatemala to Lebanese ancestry, Dr. Kevin studied in Mexico, graduating as a plastic surgeon in 2006. Once he began practicing, he quickly gained recognition, showcasing photos with renowned artists like Bad Bunny and producer Emilio Estefan on his social media. It is notable that in 2019, he attended the Latin Grammys. Dr. Maloof was the owner of a specialized hospital and a center for aesthetics and body weight control, both situated in one of the most affluent areas of Guatemala City. It is believed that Floridalma chose him as her specialist because one of her sons also resided in the area and attended university there. In any case, the surgery was a success, and Floridalma returned to her activities with renewed energy and enthusiasm, absolutely delighted with the results. However, she was also eager to pursue additional enhancements soon. Everything was arranged for the middle of the following year. Thus, Floridalma traveled from New York to Guatemala, and on June 13, 2023, she was admitted to the clinic. Security camera footage reveals that she was accompanied that day by a relative, Rosario Sandoval, who promised to pick her up the next morning at 10 a.m. upon her discharge. On this occasion, Floridalma was scheduled to undergo a surgical procedure that included facial rejuvenation and liposuction on her arms, all for a cost of nearly $9,700. However, when Rosario returned, Dr. Kevin informed her that the woman had left 3 hours earlier after requesting a vehicle. Despite this, Floridalma never arrived home, and after 24 hours with no news, her relatives began to suspect that something was amiss. They filed a complaint with the public prosecutor's office, which subsequently activated a missing person alert. Floridalma's 22-year-old daughter contacted her father in tears, expressing her concern over her mother's strange disappearance. Meanwhile, Josa Lopez, another of Floridalma's children, took to social media to post updates about the situation, seeking help in locating their mother. When authorities interviewed the clinic owner, he explained that after her successful surgery, Floridalma spent the remainder of the day in observation and recovery. Around 7:00 a.m. the following morning, she had requested to be discharged, stating that someone was waiting for her in the lobby of the building. At the entrance of the same building, Kevin stated that she was accompanied by staff in a wheelchair, where she boarded the vehicle in question. He also mentioned that he had not had any further communication with her and only learned of her disappearance through the news. To eliminate any doubt about his account and to demonstrate his willingness to cooperate with the investigation, Kevin provided both the family and the police with surveillance footage showing the woman, her head completely covered, leaving the office and exiting the building of her own volition and in good health. Investigators began working to identify the vehicle that had picked up Floridalma and its driver. Meanwhile, the public prosecutor's office maintained strict confidentiality regarding the ongoing case to prevent information from leaking to the press. However, family members were convinced that the female figure in the video was not Floridalma. They noted that she appeared much taller and heavier than their mother. Additionally, considering that Floridalma had just undergone eyelid surgery, it was expected that she would have had limited visibility, contrary to what was evident in the video. The discrepancies did not end there, as Kevin provided conflicting accounts, initially stating that Floridalma had ordered a vehicle through an app and later claiming that a relative was supposedly waiting for her outside the facility. In light of these inconsistencies, the family decided to take matters into their own hands, initially creating a virtual fundraiser to support the search and seeking assistance from the NIPT, FBI, and the U.S. Embassy in Guatemala City. Unfortunately, since the disappearance occurred outside the United States, these efforts were largely unsuccessful. The following month, due to the family's insistence, the local police conducted a further investigation. Authorities discovered a second video in which members of the clinic staff were seen removing a large dumpster and garbage bags during the night of Floridalma's disappearance. Following this lead in late June 2023, 4 properties associated with Kevin were raided, resulting in the arrest of Kevin and 3 other staff members, anesthesiologist Lydia Viviana Silva and nurses Luis Castro and Susana Rojas. The 4 individuals were brought before the duty court, where the grounds for their arrest were explained. According to the prosecutor's office, there was sufficient evidence to link them to Floridalma's disappearance. Consequently, they were charged with kidnapping and hindering the prosecution and were remanded in custody at dawn the following day. During a press conference, the public prosecutor's office announced that the prosecutor's office of Foish had initiated proceedings against the crime of femicide. In coordination with the regional prosecutor and with the support of the National Civil Police. This led to 6 search and seizure operations, ultimately resulting in the arrest of the 4 individuals. At that time, detailed information remained confidential, but it was revealed that the Ministry of Health suspended the clinic's sanitary license. A few weeks later, the first statements from the accused were released, and they were indicted, necessitating their continued detention under preventive measures. The secrecy surrounding the case was deeply troubling for Floridalma's children, who found it unfathomable that justice could be so easily silenced. In the subsequent months, although the case seemed to lose momentum, Floridalma's loved ones remained steadfast in their hope, continuing their online fundraising efforts to cover the costs associated with her search. Edward, one of Floridalma's sons, explained to the press at the time that his mother's phone had been turned off before the operation and had never been turned on again, just when it seemed that the story might fade from public attention. An unexpected turn of events in May 2024 reignited outrage among the public and Floridalma's family. This twist came when Luis, the nurse, became the only defendant to expand his testimony. His account was chilling. According to Luis, during Floridalma's surgery, she began to bleed from her right cheek, necessitating a temporary suspension of the procedure and the administration of an anticoagulant. However, the patient did not undergo a gluconar test. Kevin, the doctor, claimed that there was nothing amiss, insisting they could proceed. After the surgery, Kevin left the clinic, but by midday, noticing that Floridalma had not regained consciousness, Luis and Susana conducted gluconar tests and discovered that her blood sugar level was around 350, significantly higher than the normal range of 70 to 110. The last time Floridalma urinated was around 1:30 p.m., and they could no longer see her urine. At that point, she was connected to a mechanical ventilator in the operating room. The 2 nurses promptly notified Kevin that insulin needed to be administered urgently. To their astonishment, he replied that they should simply wait, insisting that she would recover on her own. Kevin never entered the operating room to assess the situation, despite the patient's lack of improvement. At almost 2 p.m., when her blood sugar levels remained dangerously high, Susana and Luis returned to the doctor, urging him to obtain crystalline insulin to lower her glucose levels. Again, the doctor refused, reiterating that it was better to wait and adding that the insulin was very expensive. The nurses continued to monitor the patient, despite her showing greater signs of distress. Finally, at nearly 5 p.m., when Kevin returned to the clinic, he decided to procure the insulin, albeit 2 hours too late. Susana and Luis informed him of the urgent need to transfer Floridalma to a healthcare facility. However, Kevin claimed that such a transfer would be too expensive and categorically refused, leading to the tragic outcome that Floridalma never regained consciousness. From that moment on, the situation grew even more complicated. The nurse's testimony indicated that the surgeon was unwilling to jeopardize his reputation, as he was already being prosecuted for the death of another woman in the operating room. Determined to eliminate any evidence at any cost, Kevin began to plan for the disposal of the body once he acknowledged the tragic outcome. Footage revealed him moving nervously through the corridors while making several phone calls. Luis stated that Kevin's initial plan involved placing the body in a suitcase, which would have required breaking the limbs. However, when Luis refused to carry out that gruesome task, Kevin altered his strategy. He instructed them to position the remains in a barrel in a fetal position. Luis confessed to having audio evidence of these instructions. Although Kevin's defense refused to allow the recording to be played during the hearing, Luis revealed that the video captured Kevin himself transporting the container, visibly anxious while carrying a black nylon bag. Inside that bag were Floridalma's belongings, her shoes, clothes, and cell phone. Once Kevin left with the barrel, the other employees remained at the hospital. Not long after, while Kevin was at home, he received a phone call, during which the distinct sound of saws could be heard in the background. Luis highlighted that, already at home, Kevin transferred the victim's body into a suitcase, presumably with the help of accomplices. But neither he nor his co-workers knew the identities of these individuals. Luis confessed that he had refrained from speaking about the incident due to fears for his life, having received threats from third parties. While this revelation left everyone stunned, it was even more shocking to learn that the video Kevin presented, which supposedly showed Floridalma leaving the clinic, was actually a fabricated simulation orchestrated by him and his associates. The public prosecutor's office later confirmed that Kevin was already facing 2 other pending cases, one in 2019 for culpable injury and another in 2021 for manslaughter stemming from a victim's death following a cosmetic procedure. As expected, the prosecutor's office dedicated itself to investigating both allegations, which involved gathering new witness statements, conducting legal expertise, and performing forensic audits. Consequently, the judge summoned the parties for a new hearing and granted the prosecution a 30-day deadline to incorporate new evidence before deciding whether to proceed with charges against the 4 accused in Floridalma's disappearance. However, just on the first anniversary of the events, the case experienced a significant turning point in the judicial process, marked by an unexpected twist. Kevin ultimately confessed to his guilt, revealing the location of the victim's remains. That same day, authorities traveled to the south-central region of the country, where they discovered a female skeleton in a well located on a farm in San Vicente Pacaya. Although the official identification of the remains was pending, the news made headlines across the media, and Floridalma's family anxiously awaited the truth, no matter how painful it might be. They were utterly dismayed by the manner in which the skeleton was found. When the National Institute of Forensic Sciences confirmed the devastating news that the remains belonged to 59-year-old Floridalma, the public prosecutor's office requested to modify the charges against the four accused, a request that the judge accepted. At that moment, Floridalma's children faced a harrowing reality. They were relieved to finally identify their mother and provide her with a Christian burial. Their greatest wish was for justice to be served. After all, Floridalma had always been a good, hard-working, and honest woman who did not deserve such a tragic fate. It was ultimately proven that, after her death, her body had been dismembered with a saw. One of her children lamented, "Today we learned that Dr. Kevin mistreated my mother and cut her up." Speculation arose regarding whether Kevin would be tried for murder or manslaughter, with the potential penalty for the latter being up to 40 years in prison. Or manslaughter, which would result in a sentence of 40 years in prison. The only other individual implicated was Cindy Barrios Morales, the clinic receptionist, who, according to investigators, lied in her testimony. She claimed that on the day Floridalma arrived at the clinic, she was not present. However, her version was disproved by the establishment's security cameras, leading to her indictment for concealment. Shortly thereafter, the judge released her, pending her next appearance. Meanwhile, in the Congress of the Republic, an initiative was underway to reform the health code, obliging the Ministry of Health to establish a national public registry for technicians and professionals, as well as for any individuals who directly or indirectly manipulate the human body. This reform was being discussed while awaiting a judicial decision on the most critical charge, the trial of the four defendants accused of obstructing the prosecution. Tearfully, Susana pointed out that it was beyond their control to save the patient's life at that moment due to the lack of necessary insulin. She reiterated that she, Luis, and Lydia had insisted to Kevin on multiple occasions that he purchase the insulin and arrange for the victim's transfer to an intensive care unit. Furthermore, Susana denounced that it was the doctor's threats that prevented her from reporting him. She stated that fear for her own life and that of her children compelled her to collaborate in the pretense that Floridalma had left the clinic. Ultimately, the four defendants were found guilty, and on Thursday, September 13, 2024, the judge of the Fourth Court sentenced Kevin Maluf, Lydia Silva, Susana Rojas, and Luis Castro to 4 years in prison. However, since they all accepted their culpability, the sentence was reduced to 2 years. They were also disqualified from practicing their respective professions for several years, while Luis received an additional 2 months of imprisonment for concealment. Having accepted the charges, his sentence was halved, and he will be the only one to regain his freedom after a year in pretrial detention. The other 3 defendants will remain incarcerated, as the court ruled that Kevin and Lydia must face criminal proceedings for homicide, while Susana is charged with complicity in the crime. All 3 are expected to appear at the intermediate stage hearing scheduled for September 19, 2024, when the judge will determine whether to proceed to trial for the aforementioned crimes. According to a former prosecutor from the Public Prosecutor's Office and a specialist in criminology, the outlook appears grim for Kevin, primarily because he made a grave error by not notifying the patient's family of her death and, instead, seemingly went to great lengths to conceal the evidence. Well, boys and girls, that wraps up today's video about a case we previously discussed on the channel, highlighting several new details. This second video was necessary due to the recent conviction and the discovery of Floridalma's body, along with many more unfortunate details regarding her tragic fate. It is deeply disheartening that a person responsible for her health ended up abandoning her body in pieces in a location where no one would find her. Such actions are utterly reprehensible and are entirely unbefitting of a doctor, whose primary duty is to care for human life, not to take it. They should strive to provide the best possible care, regardless of the resources available. Floridalma needed insulin, which should have been administered to her as part of the comprehensive procedure she had paid for. The circumstances surrounding this case are tragic, and the consequences for these individuals should be severe. They have received a disqualification of 4 years, but we hope for a much longer sentence and the permanent revocation of their medical licenses. It is crucial that they no longer practice, as they pose a genuine danger to society, not only as professionals but also as individuals. As I have pointed out in numerous cases, those capable of mutilating their victims are indeed threats to everyone around them. If you found this video informative, please remember to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I update my channel 3 or 4 times a week. Subscribers will receive notifications every time I upload a new video. With that said, I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.